Hello and welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and in this video we're going to conclude the creation of this 468 index. In the first part you saw us do the octagon portion, and now in this second part we're going to do the hexagon and do the demo. Alright, we just took this out to form our octagon. Now I'm going to come back in here. I know the circle that I'm going to put in here, which will be the next to the last step, is going to be 2 inch. So I'm going to set my compass up with a radius of 1 inch and just give a little indication right here. I've already got this figured out, but I want to show you how I come up with that. So that's what the inner circle, inner hole is going to be. We want our hexagon edge to be somewhere in between, approximately halfway in between the edge of the circle, the edge of this circle, and the edge of the octagon. So I'm just going to take my rule, and that looks like about 1.4, 1.5 to the center. This is no precision measurement required at all. So what I'm going to do is set my compass at 1.45. Now for the hexagon, we want a circle to begin with instead of a square. So I'm going to put a good serious circle there. Now here's where the X and Y center lines that I put in come into play. With my compass still set at the radius of the circle we're going to make a hexagon out of, where that circle intersects that center line, I'm going arc, arc, same thing at the bottom, arc, and arc. Now, 10th grade geometry is coming back to you, isn't it? So what we're going to do is join the point that we pivoted the compass on and the arc that we made. And then each arc to arc. Remember what I said, these are on the workpiece are just going to be guidelines to mill close to and to use as a guide. So there's our 6 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now what we're going to go back and mill out is we'll mill out the rest of that after I lay out the hexagon on the workpiece. I'll do that, meet you back over at the vise. All right, I got the camera up high again, and you can see I've got the workpiece in here, and here's our 6-sided hexagon laid out on the workpiece. Now, with this set back to 0, I can get a good deal of what I got to mill out off of these 2 sides here. So again, I'm just going to touch off. Just to get a good starting point, so I know how much to advance. And remember, we're only going 330 thousandths deep this time. But I'm going to go ahead and mill this out to this line here, move over to this side, and mill out to that line. And I'll bring you back when I get ready to adjust the vise. Okay, I milled these 2 sides right here, which was these two flat sides of a hexagon. And then I failed to turn the camera on, but I swung the vise to 60 degrees. Then milled these two sides. Now, I milled this one, then I moved over to mill this one, and as I was milling it, remember I started way out here. As I was getting closer and closer to my line, I noticed that the cut was not lining up with the guideline that I had put on here. I looked down here at my setting, and evidently I had not tightened the vise down good because it had moved over to, let's see, that would have been 70. It moved over to near about 70 degrees. But I saw that long before I got to the line. This side lined up right with the line, so I knew the vise didn't move until I come over here. So I set it back to 60 degrees, and I still had plenty of room, plenty left to mill to get that back to the line. Now we're ready for our last two lines. Now, I could move the vise all the way over to 120 degrees. Find my mark on here, which is actually 60 on the other side of 0, or the other side of 90 down here. But I may run out of space back here. So let's do this. Remember, we started out at 0 and did these. Then we went to 60 degrees and then did these two. Let's go back to 30 degrees, and instead of cutting on the y-axis, we can use the power feed and go on the z-axis if I got enough room to get over here. Let me double check that, which is going to be very questionable. Nope. So what we need to do is bring our vise right on around. Right here's the 90 degrees. So if we line up on the 60 over here, which is basically 120 degrees, we see that we're in line. And see if, get my handle off. That's going to be very close over here as well, but I think we can get it. Let me tighten that down. As you can tell, I have not made a prototype of the 4-inch. We're learning as we go here. You guys with the larger mills obviously will not have this problem. I think that's going to get it. So just like before, let's touch off on this end. All right, I'm going to do just like I've been doing before, and I'll bring you back when we get this last side milled off. All right, now we have the 6 sides of our hexagon mill. I can go ahead and bring the end mill up out of the way now. We're done with it. I'm going to swing the vise back around to 0. The next step doesn't necessarily require that, but the final step will, or will make it easier if it's at 0. So I'm going to take the end mill out and put our drill chuck in. And I'm going to put just a pointer in the drill chuck. And now I'm just going to use that pointer to find that center that we put in there to begin with. And this does not even have to be dead center. It could be off to either side. Remember, this is a setup jig. We're not going to be milling to any of these sides or corners. We're simply going to be, or edges, we're going to be milling the angle that we set this up at. but I will try to put it as close to center as possible. All right, I'm going to lock the X and Y axis down. And I want the largest drill bit I've got is 1 inch. So I'm going to drill this to 1 inch, and then we'll simply use the boring bar to bore it out to 2 inches. But I'm going to start with a lead hole with a 1/4 inch drill. And of course we're going to slow way down for this bit. All right, that should be pretty close to the 1 inch. And you know the routine, just keep advancing this. Pretty aggressive to begin with, but I'm going to do that until I've got about a 2 inch or just a little over 2 inches, because I want a 2 inch piece to go in there without having to finagle it or try to convince it to go in. So we've got a little boring to do here. I'll bring you back when we get a little closer. All right, I think this cut is probably going to do it, but I'm going to set the DRO, zero it out, so after I make this cut, I can bring the work out here and try this piece. This is a piece of 2 inch right here. Remember, I'm looking a loose fit on 2 inch. Since I'm using a relatively long boring bar here, I'm going to make a couple of passes with it just to take any spring out of the boring bar. All right, I've got the DRO zeroed on both axes. So I unlock the Y, and that goes in fine, no resistance at all. Okay, folks, what I'm going to do now, try to give you a shot here. I have got a mound of chips. There's just as many on the other side of the vise as you're seeing over here. They're down on the mill, they're on the mill table, and it looks like it snowed on the floor. So while that piece is cooling off a little bit, I'm going to vacuum that up. I'll take the workpiece out, carry it over to my Scotch-Brite wheel, and just clean up some burrs on it. I won't try to carry the camera in there for that, but we'll come back and do the final step on this, and then we'll be ready to give it a test. Okay, I got the mill cleaned up just a little bit, and I carried the workpiece over to the Scotch-Brite wheel and cleaned it up some. I may carry it back and clean up these mill marks a little bit more, but I wanted to do a check as well. That's dead on 45 degrees. Checking it all the way around. Now if we check our hexagon, we should be dead on the 60 degrees, which we are. So we got one more step to do on the tool. While I had it out, put a center mark centered from outside edge to outside edge, and then the two inner edges. So we'll mount that back up in our vise, and we'll just use the center drill to line it up with. All right, we're going to drill and tap this for a 1/4 20. Now there's no need at all of threading that whole length from here to the inside. Let me get a approximate measure there. Let's see where I can get my tool. Well, it should be the same out here. That's 0.95, so 475 thousandths. I think we'll drill down into this with an oversized drill, which I'll go, that's going to be a 1/4 I'll go one size up from that, 1/64 up from a 1/4. I'll zero out the DRO right there, and we said 475. I'll go down 500 thousandths. That'll still leave 450 thousandths of thread. All right, there's 500 thousandths with the oversized drill. I guess that would be a 33/64. I think we've got our tool made now. So I'm going to get set up to actually show this in use and be right back. All right, I've got the mill cleaned off just a little bit. And what I've done is set our indexing jig up with the bolt. I've tightened it on this piece of 1.5 inch material. I'm going to put a hexagon on the other end of it. Hopefully you can see in the upper right hand corner of the screen here the little camera I've got set up on the actual milling action. But what I've done is set the index up with the square on the table to one of the sides on the hexagon. So now let's mill that. Over here I've got about a, I'm coming down about 100 thousandths. I'll have the x-axis locked. Maybe just a little long on the x-axis. I'm going to back up just a little, lock it back down again. Now we want to index 45 degrees. So I'm going to loosen my mill vise just a little. Make another cut. We'll continue this process for each of the 8 sides. Notice over here in the little camera, I do have a work stop on here to keep my x-axis the same. One thing about this, if you start to get chips in here, if you need to take your work out, clean it out, that's not a problem whatsoever. You just go back in up to the work stop. You see over here, we're coming up with this side with the bolt in it. I'm going to be making in a later video, I'm going to be making some lockdowns for all of these indexes that I'm going to be creating. This is just one of 4 that I'm going to create. But the point I wanted to make here, if the head here was to get in the way, one thing, we could turn to go to this side for our next index, or we could take the index entirely off. As long as we keep the workpiece in place, we could loosen the index and rotate it and line it back up on one of our sides. if that's what it took to get all the way around. Remember, this is just a setup jig. We'll see if nope, I don't think it's going to get in the way in this one. But again, if it did, I can simply come right over here to this side. And I hope you see now why I said that this center hole did not have to be, this hole did not have to be dead in the center. These sides didn't have to be the same length. It's just that each one of these needs to be, in this case, 45 degrees to each adjacent side. Alrighty, I'm going to take the workpiece out. Turn it around here to the larger camera. Of course, I've got some burrs in. Give me just a second. Let me walk around in there to the Scotch-Brite wheel, clean off some of these burrs, and I'll be right back. So here we have our 8-sided octagon milled into the end of a piece, and did that with the index that we just created. As I said, I'm going to have 4 of these in the end. I've got this larger one that we just created. I've got the smaller one that I created as a prototype. And in the next video, what I hope to do, what I plan to do, is using round stock, make an index for a 3-side and a 5-sided. That way I'll have a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, and an 8, which are all, of course, factors of 360. Hope you enjoyed this video. Stick around. There's more to come in this series of making indexes. Take care, and I'll see you on another video.